says, rescue those who have unjustly been sentenced to death. Don't stand back and let them die. Don't try to disclaim responsibility by saying that you didn't know. For the Lord, who knows all hearts, knows you knew, and he will reward everyone according to his deeds. So I thought those were my marching orders. I was called to stay and fight. So I wrote a letter to the religious leaders of the hospital because I couldn't believe that they knew what was going on in the labor and delivery department just a couple of floors over their heads. But they knew. And as a result of my letter, I was called in for a meeting with my department superiors. And they told me that they thought induced labor abortion was the most compassionate way to abort because this method of abortion allowed parents to grieve because they got to see their baby die. And they said that this was the most compassionate way for the baby to be aborted because this method of abortion allowed the baby to be held until the baby died rather than be suctioned or dismembered as with other methods of abortion. And my bosses told me it would be a shame to lose me, but I might be better suited at another hospital that was more in line with my pro-life convictions. But I told them I wasn't going to leave. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do next, but I knew that I hadn't done enough to try and stop what was going on there. So next, my pastor and I alerted a couple of influential people and organizations and asked them to appeal to the hospital. One who did was Cardinal Francis George of Chicago, who wrote a letter on these babies' behalf. Another was Dr. C. Everett Koop, the former Surgeon General of the United States under President Reagan, who's pro-life. But appeals such as this had no impact in the hospital. They said they weren't going to stop. And so, as he told them he was going to do if they didn't stop, my pastor in July of 1999 wrote a letter to some 70 churches and pro-life organizations around the country, letting them know what Christ Hospital was up to. And it was my pastor's letter that kind of triggered all of the public outcry that went on after that. Before I knew it, the story was in the New York Times and Newsweek, and I was being interviewed on the O'Reilly Factor and asked to speak from one end of the country to the other. And it turned out that induced labor abortion was not at all rare. Invariably, wherever I would speak, someone would come up to me afterward and say, Jill, it's going on in my hospital. Or they would call in on the radio and say, Jill, I've seen it. And it is going on over here. This method of abortion that we've been talking about is probably the most common late-term abortion method now, and taken the place of the D&E abortions. And there was just a study out, I think in 2007, from a section of hospitals in the Midlands of England that I think 27 out of 30 hospitals said that they were involved in this method of abortion, and they had some abortion survivors. So it is close to here. And then it turned out that according to God's perfect timing of events, a bill that had been in the works for a decade on the federal level called the Born Alive Infants Protection Act came to fruition in the United States Congress. Someone saw the day coming when abortion would leave the uterus and we would be talking about infanticide, which is like the next logical step. I've had some people say to me that if they think a baby should survive the first attempt to kill him or her, that they should have the right to mandate that that baby be killed on the other side after that baby's born. Father Pavone calls them fourth trimester abortions. This is how far abortion has come in the United States. We're arguing about this now. I've been asked to testify 9 times now on the federal level and in various states regarding babies who I knew were aborted alive and allowed to die. And all of the procedures and incidences I'm going to be describing to you tonight I've given under oath, and Christ Hospital has never publicly denied that what I'm saying is true, because it can't. One of the legislators who argued this point with me was my own state Senator Barack Obama in 2001, 2002, and 2003, when he was still in the state legislature in Illinois, and the Born Alive Act came up before the state legislature. And he argued to my face that if giving a preterm born baby the same legal rights as giving a full-term born baby was what we were looking for, then he said that he thought that that would lead to the overturn of Roe v. Wade, and he opposed it actively. He voted against it 4 times in the state Senate, and he was the only state senator to speak against it on the Senate floor. I told the legislators about what a support associate relayed to me of accidentally throwing one of these live aborted babies into the trash. She didn't realize that the baby was wrapped in a disposable towel next to the sink in the soiled utility room and accidentally dropped the baby on the floor. Wrapped in a disposable towel in the soiled utility room, and so when she was going through the trash, attempting to retrieve the baby, was when she accidentally dropped the baby on the floor. I told the legislators about what another nurse coworker relayed to me of aborting a baby who was supposed to have spina bifida, but who was born with a completely intact spine. And what happened was there was an incomplete twin in the placenta. And this incomplete twin looked like a mass on his brother's back, or spina bifida. But there was nothing wrong actually with this other little guy. He was completely healthy. And the mom and the dad who were aborting him were both doctors. And my friend said that the dad came into the soiled utility room after what he thought was the abortion of his handicapped son, and saw that he had just given permission to abort his completely healthy boy. And she said he didn't say a word. He turned and he left the room silently. And I find this incident particularly poignant because it points out that abortion just doesn't kill children. And abortion just doesn't maim and kill our girls and women. But abortion has a profound impact on men too. Because I'm sure that this guy did not go back to his wife's room and tell her what he knew and increase her guilt and her shame even more. I'm sure that this is something that he lives with by himself to this very day, as so many men do. I told the legislators about a situation that a nurse coworker relayed to me. She said to me, "Jill, I can't stop thinking about it." She was involved in the abortion of a baby who was just over 23 weeks old, or just over the line of viability. A normal pregnancy is about 40 weeks, and doctors say that they can save babies right around 23 weeks and or a pound, give or take, a couple days, give or take a couple ounces. So this baby was right there. And the mom wasn't going to be able to complete her pregnancy to term. So because she was at a hospital that offered choices, they said to her, "Do you want to deliver a baby in distress, or do you want to abort?" And she said, "Well, I want to abort." She had the option of holding on to that pregnancy for even just a couple more days to give that baby a little more time, but she chose not to. Now, if she'd wanted everything done for her baby, a team of 4 specialists would have been sent over from the neonatal unit at delivery to care for this little girl. But because she wasn't wanted, the only people present at her delivery was my nurse friend and an OBGYN resident. And this little girl was aborted alive. And she began breathing on her own. And amazingly, her APGAR scores improved between 1 and 5 minutes, meaning she began showing signs of thriving all by herself without any help whatsoever. But nothing was done for her. She was just kept in the department and rocked for the 2.5 hours that she lived. And the reason that my friend couldn't stop thinking about it is because she too was pregnant. And she too was just about 23 weeks along, right around the same age as the baby that she just helped kill. I had a coworker, Allison Baker, who testified with me in Washington, and she told the legislators about one time finding a live aborted baby laying in the soiled utility room naked next to the sink, and wants to find a live aborted baby laying naked on the scale. And she said that she herself once inherited a patient, a change of shift, who didn't want anything to do with her live aborted baby. And so Allison was running back and forth caring for her 2 patients, which she still had 2. One of them was in the soiled utility room. And she said every time she would go into the mom's room, the mom would say to her, "Is he dead yet? Is he dead yet?" Well, in the midst of all the congressional testimony that was going on by this time, and prayer vigils, and we had pickets and protests at the hospital. I continued to work there for another 2 years after I went public. I didn't like staying there, but every time I thought about leaving, Isaiah 8:18 kept coming back to me. And it says, I will wait with hope for the Lord. I am here with the children that the Lord has given me. I do not believe that there can be any such thing as coincidence. If the Bible says that not a sparrow falls from the sky without his knowing it, and that all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord, then we are all at this moment in time for a reason. We're all in this geographical location for a reason, with our sphere of influence around us for a reason. We may not understand sometimes the reasons for the difficulties that we go through, but God never promises us that we'll understand. He just asks us to have faith in him, that he's a good God and he has good plans. In fact, Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble. So it's a guarantee. So I submit, if we pro-lifers are going through this life and we're not wanting to make waves, not wanting to be known as right-wing extremists, in America not wanting to be put on the domestic terrorist watch list, I wonder how effective of a witness can we really think that we are? Because I thought my duty was not only to be a witness to people on the inside, but to be a witness to people on the outside, to let you know how horrible abortion has gotten. I watched and I listened very carefully for those 2 years that went by before I was eventually fired, and I heard many heartbreaking incidences. One nurse friend told me about an aborting patient that she had who didn't realize that her baby could be aborted alive, and so not only was hysterical when he came out alive, but also because he didn't appear to have the external defects that she'd been told he was going to have, which was why she was aborting her baby. So she screamed for someone to help her baby, and my friend ran over to the unit, grabbed the neonatologist, and he came rushing back, and he quickly assessed the baby, and he had to look the mom in the eye and say, there's nothing I can do for your son because he was born too soon. And the mom was so traumatized, she had to be tranquilized. And it was left up to this little guy's grandmother to rock him for the only half hour that she would ever spend with him. Another time, while an abortion was taking place in one room, I had my own full-term delivery in another room down the hall. And when it came time for my patient to deliver, I asked for someone to get the nursing assistants for me. And the nurse taking care